The gym was smaller than I expected. I had driven past 3 times before I made myself park, which tells you everything about my state of mind at the time. It was a Wednesday evening in January, which is the most desperate month, and I had been sitting in my car in the parking lot of my old gym, the big commercial one with the mirrors everywhere and the televisions bolted to every piece of cardio equipment. For 20 minutes before I admitted I couldn't go back in there, Daniel and I had joined that gym together. We had gone 3 mornings a week for 2 years. I knew which treadmill he preferred and which locker he always used and exactly how he arranged his water bottle and his phone and his towel. And I could not go back in there and stand next to the absence of all of that. So I drove until I found something different. The sign outside said threshold strength in plain block letters. No tagline, no promises about transformation or your best self. Just the name, and below it, in smaller letters, by appointment. I called the number from the parking lot. A man answered on the second ring. I don't know what I'm doing, I said, which was meant to be an introduction but came out as something more accurate than that. There was a brief pause. That's fine, he said. Come in Thursday at 6. His name was Jonah. He was not what the word personal trainer had historically conjured for me. Not aggressively enthusiastic. Not decorated with the particular energy of someone who wants you to feel bad about yourself so they can fix you. He was quiet and direct, and he moved through the space with the economy of someone who had long ago stopped needing to perform competence. He shook my hand when I arrived. His grip was straightforward. Not a test, not a demonstration, just a hand. Tell me why you're here, he said. And we sat in the small office off the main floor. And he actually listened to the answer, which I hadn't prepared for. I told him about the gym I couldn't go back to. I didn't tell him about Daniel, not directly. But I said I was going somewhere regularly for 2 years, and now I can't, and he nodded like that. Sentence contained everything it needed to. What do you want from this, he said. I had thought about this in the car on the way over, and I had prepared a sensible answer about cardiovascular health and strength, benchmarks, and wanting to feel more energetic. Instead, I heard myself say, I want to feel like my body belongs to me again. He looked at me steadily, didn't react to it, didn't soften it, didn't redirect me toward something more practical, just absorbed it as the real answer it was. Okay, he said, we can work with that. The first session was an assessment. He watched me move through a series of basic patterns, squat, hinge, push, pull, with the focused observational quality of someone cataloging information rather than judging it. He corrected almost nothing that first session, which surprised me. He just watched and occasionally said again or slower and made notes on a clipboard. At the end, he said, your body is braced for impact. What does that mean? It means you're holding tension everywhere all the time, like you're waiting for something to go wrong. He said it clinically, not unkindly. It's a protective pattern. We'll work on it. I drove home thinking about that. Braced for impact. I had been, I realized, for about 8 months, since the conversation in the kitchen, where Daniel had said, I think I need to go in the tone of voice that meant he had already gone, and was only now informing the rest of the situation. I came back Monday. Jonah taught with his hands. Not constantly, not unnecessarily. He was precise about it. Always announcing what he was going to do before he did it. Always checking. But the corrections required contact, and he understood that. And after the first few sessions, we had established a wordless vocabulary of adjustment that became one of the most specific forms of physical communication I had ever experienced. For the deadlift, he would stand behind me, both hands finding my hips before I initiated the movement, repositioning them with a firmness that was entirely technical and landed somewhere entirely else. Hinge here, he would say, his thumbs pressing lightly into the space above my hip bones to cue the movement. Drive from here. His hands would drop away the moment. The pattern was correct, and he'd step back and watch, and I would do the lift alone. And sometimes it would be right, and sometimes it wouldn't. And either way, he was paying the kind of attention that made me feel like the effort was being witnessed. For the squat, he would crouch beside me, one hand on my knee to track its path, one hand lightly at my lower back, feeling for the moment my spine rounded. The touch at my lower back was 2 fingers, specific and exact, and the first time he did it, I lost count of my reps entirely. Where'd you go, he said. Nowhere, I said. Sorry, start over. He didn't push it. He just reset, said from the top, and we went again. 6 weeks in, I failed a lift. It was a deadlift, heavier than I'd tried before, and I got it to mid-shin and my form broke, and I set it down and stood there for a moment with my hands on my knees, breathing. I was fine. It was a normal thing that happens in a gym. People fail lifts constantly. It's part of the process. I knew this intellectually. And then, without warning or logic, I was crying. Not dramatically, just the quiet, humiliating kind, eyes wet, jaw tight, the specific cry of someone who is not crying about the deadlift and knows it and can't stop anyway. Jonah set his clipboard down. He didn't say you're okay or hey, no, don't, or any of the things people say when they want you to stop because your emotion is making them uncomfortable. He didn't offer me a pep talk about the lift. He didn't pretend he hadn't noticed. He got a paper towel from the dispenser by the water station and set it on the bench next to me and sat down on the other end of it and was simply there, in the room, quietly, while I got myself back together. When I'd been quiet for a minute, he said, "It's not the deadlift." "No," I said. "You don't have to tell me." "I know." I turned the paper towel in my hands. His name was Daniel. We were together for 4 years. He left 8 months ago, and I still feel like I'm waiting for him to come back, even though I know he's not going to. Jonah was quiet for a moment. "What does that feel like, the waiting?" I thought about it. "Like bracing for impact," I said. Something shifted in his expression, brief, barely visible. "Yeah," he said. "I know what that's like." He didn't explain further. I didn't ask. We sat for another minute, and then he stood up and said, "You want to try it again or call it today?" "Again," I said. He nodded. We went back to the platform. I found out about his wife the way you find out things about quiet people, slowly, sideways, in pieces. A mention of "we used to" that shifted to "I used to," a photograph on the office wall that I finally asked about. Her name was Claire. She had died 2 years ago, a sudden illness, the kind that gives you almost no time to understand what's happening before it's already over. He told me on a Tuesday evening after a session, standing at the water station while we both cooled down. In the same direct and unadorned way he told me most things. Not as a confidence exactly, more like information he had decided I had earned. "I'm sorry," I said. "Thank you." He capped his water bottle. I came back to this, the work, the training, because it was the only place where I still understood what I was doing. The rules are clear. The progress is visible. He paused. It helped. I thought about that. The visible nature of progress. The clear rules. The way a body lifting something heavy is unambiguous in a way that grief is not. "Is that why you're good at it?" I said. "Because you know what it means to need somewhere to put it?" He looked at me steadily. "Probably," he said. 10 weeks in, I lifted something I couldn't lift when I started. It wasn't the weight I'd failed at. It was heavier. Jonah had added it to the program 3 weeks earlier, and I had been working toward it incrementally. And on a Thursday evening in March, with the light coming through the high windows at a low angle, I set up the bar and took my position, and felt his hands settle on my hips for the last cue before I pulled. "You've got it," he said quietly. Not a cheer, just information. I pulled. The bar left the floor and my hips, drove through, and I stood up straight with the weight in my hands, and it was heavy. And I had it, and I held it for a full breath before I set it down. I straightened up. My hands were shaking slightly. Jonah was standing back from the platform, arms crossed, watching. He didn't shout or clap or perform the celebration. He just looked at me with an expression I had no name for. Satisfaction? Maybe, but the private kind. The kind that has nothing to prove. He nodded, once, like something had been confirmed. I felt it land in my chest like a key in a lock. After, while I was putting on my jacket, I said, "I don't feel like I'm waiting anymore." He was wiping down the platform. He stilled for a moment. "For Daniel," he said, "for whatever comes next." I zipped my jacket. I've been braced for 8 months. I think I'm done bracing. He straightened up and looked at me across the room. The gym was quiet. It was late. We were always the last session of the day, the lights in the back already off. "That's the work," he said, "not the lifting." "I know." I picked up my bag. "Thank you for knowing the difference." He walked me to the door the way he always did and held it open, and I stepped out into the cool March air and stood on the pavement for a moment before turning back. He was still holding the door, still watching. "Same time Monday?" I said. He considered me for a moment in the way he considered most things, fully, without hurry, without performance. "Same time Monday," he said. The door stayed open a beat longer than it needed to. I walk to my car feeling the particular sensation of a body that has done something real, the good ache of muscles that have been asked to work and have worked, the specific tiredness that comes from effort that mattered. I felt the ground under my feet differently than I had in a long time. Solid, present, mine. I drove home with the windows down despite the cold, and the air came in and I let it. And somewhere on the highway I realized I had stopped waiting and started something else entirely, though I didn't have a name for it yet. That felt exactly right. Some things you should let stay unnamed a little longer. For mature audiences, all characters are adults. All interactions are consensual.